Welcome to Module 2 of the Estimator Express Takeoff and Estimate Software Skills course. Today's session is based on several items on the library, which can be found on the navigator on the left-hand side of your screen. During this module, you will learn how to set up your price book to match the prices you pay your merchants. We'll spend some time reviewing the rates in each of the 5 different sections of the price book. So as well as looking at the materials, we'll also look at the labour, plant, subcontractor and sundry items. I'll show you how you can edit the prices of existing resources, and I'll also show you how you can add your own resources into the price book. I'll show you how you can use a setting called Favourite Merchants to set up Estimator Express to use your preferred merchants for different product types. We'll also spend some time looking at these specifications. The hope is that you'll learn what specifications are and which specifications are suitable for which type of work. I'll show you how you can change resources and their rates of usage within a specification, and I'll show you how you can adjust your default profit markup and inflation rates within Estimator Express. So once you've launched the software, you'll see this screen, the dashboard screen. If you're not looking at the dashboard screen, you can click Dashboard on the navigator on the left-hand side. From the dashboard screen, you can open an existing job by clicking on any of the jobs underneath where it says Recent Work. You may need to scroll further down the screen to find older jobs, or rather jobs that you haven't opened recently. You can also start work on a new estimate by clicking the Create New Job button. So as I've mentioned already, on the left-hand side of the screen, we have got the Estimator Express Navigator. Use this menu to navigate your way around the software. From here, you can open a list of jobs from where you can view and edit your job details. You can open grouped jobs, which we'll come on to shortly. You can also go into the Estimator Express library, and I'm going to be talking in depth about that today. At the top of the screen, we've got a ribbon. So it has multiple different tabs, all of which have different tools, and the ribbon changes depending on which screen of the software you're looking at. So on the dashboard screen, we've got the dashboard tab, and from here we've got another button for creating the new job, and we can create a group of jobs. So once you've estimated multiple jobs, if you have a version of Estimator Express which allows you to create groups of jobs, you can join them together and look at the data for a set of jobs. So it could be a small development. You could combine the quotes for, rather the estimates for multiple new builds, and look at the data, the reports, the output, the build program and so on for a group of jobs rather than just an individual one. Next we have the Settings tab. From here you can open up the Estimator Express options. I'll just click on that button to show you what that window looks like. From the options you can make changes to how the software outputs various types of information. You can change the default VAT rates. You can set up how the software updates. And you can also change the registered users details. I'll just show you that screen now. So if you click registered user, which is the 5th option down on the menu on the left, then you can update any of your registered user details. So if your address changes, you can just go in there, overtype the address that's in there, or if you need to change your email or phone numbers or even company name, that's where you do it. Once you've made any changes, just click close and your changes will be saved. Also on the Settings tab, we've got a Software Theme button. So if you click on that, you'll see there is a list of different colour options basically. For example, if you like to do your estimating or have to do your estimating in the evenings, then you may find the dark theme is easier on the eye. So that's where you can change those themes if you so wish. Then we've got a couple of more advanced settings that most people won't need to review, and we're certainly not going to be looking at them today, but just to give you a quick explanation of what they are. There's the default worksheet name location button, What that means is you can set the software to use a name that you've decided on for any of the worksheets in the estimating calculators and their associated locations. So not something you'll need to do when you're estimating to start with. And we have a network settings button. Again, another advanced setting, only needed if you're in certain work environments with special network setups. If that were the case, you'd probably want to speak to the tech support guys who could help you on that front. Okay, so the final tab we've got is the Help tab. Wherever you are in the software, you should be able to see the Help tab. If you ever get stuck, you can go to the Help tab. There's a link to all the help resources on the web. There's a link directly to the help videos. There is a button to contact HP Excel, so that will tell you the different ways you can get in touch with the tech support team. And then finally, there is the About Estimator Express button. That's a useful one to know about. So if you need to find your user ID, you'll see it's the 5th item down here. So for example, if you're doing a software update or you need to speak to a member of the tech team, knowing your user ID can be helpful. You can also see the version of the software you're running. You can see your license expiry date and your support expiry date as well. So that's handy information to have available. So that's all on the About Estimator Express button. Okay, so that's a quick tour of the dashboard. Hopefully helped you to orientate yourself a little bit. So now we're going to go into the price book. So first of all, we're going to click Library on the navigator on the left of your screen. It's the one with a cog icon. And this will take you to the library screen. So the library is where you can fine-tune all of the underlying settings which are used to create your estimates. So from here you can edit your price book, you can set your overheads and profit and inflation, you can edit the specifications, and so on. And if you scroll down the screen, you'll see there are other parts of the library that you can explore. Build program templates, so if you want to set up your own build program templates, and data reports. If you want to edit or create your own data reports, you can do that within the library as well. So focusing in on price books. If you click price books on the navigator on the left hand side of the screen, we could go directly into a section of the price book from here, but I just want to show you, if you click price books on the navigator, it takes you to the library of price books, and you'll see we've already got the master price book in the software. That comes out of the box, and you'll see there is an option to copy the master price book. So you do have the capability to create your own price books should you wish. However, we recommend that for 99% of our customers, the easiest way of working is to stick with the master price book and just use the master price book. The reason for that is if you copy the master price book, create your own, you will then be responsible for keeping those prices up to date. You'll have to keep the entire price book up to date. When you do any price downloads, that won't have an effect on your own price books. So that is obviously a rather onerous job. And for that reason, we suggest in most cases, you're better off using this master price book and adapting it, tweaking the prices so that they are matching what you pay. Okay, so if we click Open Master Price Book, so just click on the button adjacent to the master price book that says Open, and then this dialog box pops up asking us which section of the price book we want to look at. So the price book is divided into the 5 different sections, as you can see here. We're not going to start with the materials, actually. We're going to go directly to labour, the second option down. So if you click labour and then click select, and that will open up the labour section of the price book. So we'll start here. It's a fairly short section of the price book, and obviously a really critical one. On the left hand side of the screen, you will see a description of all the different labourers and indeed gangs that we have within the software. The next column shows their list price. All of the labour rates are set by the hour. So if you pay people by the day, what you need to do is take your day rate, divide it by 8, and that will give you your hourly rate. So for example, if you pay somebody 160 quid a day, divide that by 8, that would be £20 an hour. Looking down the list, you'll probably think there are more labourers and gangs in there than you actually employ, and that's fine. You don't need to use them all. If you have multi-trade people, what you would do is set their rates to match the tasks they perform. So if you've got a bloke called Bob who does bricklaying and also joinery, what you'd want to do is you'd find the bricklayer and the joiner and set both of those labour rates to match what you pay your guy Bob. So you can edit an individual labour rate if you want by clicking on it. So if I click on the bricklayer and then click edit resource. But in fact, the easiest way to do it is to use what we call the editing tools button. So if you click editing tools, you'll see we're on the price book tab at the moment here. And then if you click the edit prices option, you'll see a subtle change on screen. This purchase price column here has turned into input boxes, so like cells in an Excel spreadsheet, I guess. Now we've got an input box there. What it means is that the column is unlocked and we can simply type in the new prices into the cells. So in Estimator Express, you can only type data in where the cell is unlocked in this way. If I tried to type into the list price here, I wouldn't be able to do it. So only where you've got this input box here can you type directly into the screen. That's obviously to protect the data underneath. So now we've unlocked the purchase price column, let's have a look at the bricklayers and bricklaying gangs to start with. So they are listed alphabetically as computers do, and the numbers go at the top. So you might want to just start on the third line down the bricklayer here. So if we look at the individual labourers first, and then we can work out the costs for the gangs. So looking at the bricklayer, think about how much you pay your brickie, and you can just simply delete and type in how much you pay your bricklayer. So I'm in the East Midlands here. Our labour rate's a bit lower than they might be elsewhere in the country, so I've reduced that slightly. So type in whatever you pay your bricklayer, whether it's 23, 25, 27. Going to be different for all of us, no doubt. Once you've done that, click down into the bricklayer's mate purchase price input box underneath, and again change that rate, so delete what's in there and change the figure to whatever you pay your brickie's mate. So then once you've done the individual labourers, you then need to do a bit of arithmetic and change the prices for all of the gangs that make use of those labourers. So next line down, we've got the bricklayer and mate. So you need to combine the price of the bricklayer and the bricklayer's mate to do a bit of addition and put in the cost of that gang. Unfortunately, the software doesn't do this for us. After that, we can skip to the top and look at 2 brickies and a mate. Again, do the maths, work out the total cost of 2 bricklayers and a mate, and then we can do the same for 4 brickies and 2 mates underneath. So I'll give you a moment to do that while I do the maths at my end as well. Actually, the cost for 4 brickies and 2 mates will be twice the cost of 2 brickies and 1 mate, won't it? I'll give you a moment more to finish that off. Okay, so I've just seen a question pop up. You didn't see how to unlock the column. You go to Editing Tools and then Edit Prices. That's the way to unlock the purchase price column. Sorry, I only just seen your question pop up. So we've updated the prices for all of the bricklayers. You would then obviously continue working your way down the labour section, have a look at the joiners, electricians, so on, looking at all the different labourers. updating any prices as necessary. They are set to national averages, and of course there is variation on what people charge throughout the country. So some of them you might feel are about right, some of them might need adapting a little bit. Just a quick note, there's one slight anomaly in the labour section of the price book, and that's here we've got these allowance costs for fixing SIPS panels. Now they are linked to estimating calculators where you enter the labour cost directly into the estimating calculator. So you'll see we've got an allowance to fix external wall SIPS panels set to £1. All of these costs are set to £1. They will make sense when you use these SIPS estimating calculators, but just to make you aware that they're there, they sit in the labour section of the price book because that's where it makes most sense in terms of the way the software works. Okay, so assuming you've worked your way down the labour section of the price book, you're happy that you've updated your prices. I know you haven't completed that today, but just say in theory we have. Once you've done that, you would need to click the Save Edited Changes button. Now we get a dialog box saying, do you want to save these changes as an adjustment? Click yes. And you'll see the purchase price column is now locked down. So we click Save Edited Changes, then click yes. The purchase price column is now locked down. You'll see on the left hand side here we've got the list price. That's what came out of the box with Estimator Express. We can see this adjustment percentage here has been applied to show the difference between the list price and what I pay, which is in the purchase price column here. Okay, so that's how you update the prices for your labourers. Now you might be wondering if you can add your own labourers into the master price book. Say for example you wanted to use a 3-in-1 bricklaying gang. You can do that, that's fine. However, you just need to be aware that the existing labourers and gangs are already in use in the various specifications. So for example, in the new build specification, a 2-in-1 gang is the default bricklaying gang. So if you wanted to put your own 3-in-1 gang in there, you would then need to go into the specification and swap the bricklaying gang for each task that that gang does within the spec. We'll have a look at the specifications in depth later on today, so hopefully that will make a bit more sense. You can also add in your own specialist labourers. So for example, if you wanted to add a specialist floor tiler or a glazing specialist or any other specialists that we haven't already added in. Okay, so now let's move on to the materials section. Using the navigator on the left hand side, you can navigate to a different section. So we're now going to click on the materials section, and we're going to spend excuse me, a little bit of time getting familiar with the materials section and looking at how we can edit prices and how we can add our own materials in there as well. Okay, so if you've ever looked at the materials section of the price book, you'll realise, even if you scroll down now using your scroll wheel on your mouse, it's quite a hefty list. And we realise that can be a little bit daunting to start with, but what I recommend is that you can filter the price book down into much smaller sections that makes it easier to work with. So the first thing I want to show you is how you can practice filtering the materials by the different suppliers. Now some of you may only have HPXL price tracker resources, materials, but some of you will have other merchants whose terms we can download, so merchants such as Travis Perkins, Keyline and TradePoint. So if you hover your cursor over the merchant column, so it's in the middle of my screen, I guess it depends how big your screen is, but it's the 7th column along. If you hold your cursor over that column heading, you'll see a little icon appears. It's actually supposed to be a funnel. Now the funnel allows you to filter the information in the price book here. So if you click on the funnel icon, a menu appears and it will list all of the different merchants which you have in your software. So your list may, well, will almost certainly be different from mine. Just to note that if you click anywhere else in that box, what it actually does is it sorts the entire price book by merchant. So what you need to do is make sure that you click on the funnel icon itself. So once you've clicked on the funnel icon, you've got some options for filtering the materials here. What I'd like you to do is select only HPXL Price Tracker. So if you click the tick box next to HPXL Price Tracker, and you'll see the price book has changed, or it's been filtered. So it's showing only the HPXL Price Tracker plus products. Just a quick tip while we're here, if you wanted to select all the different merchants, or indeed unselect all the different merchants, you can use that top select all tick box. So whichever way you do it, make sure only HPXL Price Tracker Plus is selected. So that's one way that you can filter the price book. Another way that we can do it is to filter by product type. So for example, we can look at just blocks or just insulation or just drainage. So to do that, you would use the type column heading. So that's 4 columns to the right, you'll find the type column heading. And again, when you put your cursor over that column heading, the funnel icon will appear. Click on the funnel icon. And then we've got quite an extensive list of different product types which appear, so we can select which ones we want to view on screen. So for the purposes of our training this afternoon, I would like us to click blocks. And then you can click anywhere else on screen to get rid of that menu. So you'll see that we're now looking at HPXL Price Tracker Plus products of the blocks type. So we're looking at a much shorter list. So just to show you that again, we've clicked on the type filter icon, the funnel, and then we've ticked blocks. Once you've done that, click elsewhere on screen to get rid of the menu. So now we've got this small list of blocks, we can practice editing the prices. To edit material prices, you do exactly the same thing as you did in the labour section. You will click the Editing Tools button and you would click Edit Prices. Once you've done that, the purchase price column is unlocked. So just to recap, Editing Tools and then Edit Prices. So this opens up the purchase price column. So we can now update the prices of any of those products as we see fit. So I usually start by changing the price of the solid dense concrete blocks, 7 Newton, these ones here which are 100 mil wide. If you click onto a row, it will become highlighted in blue. That can be quite handy when you're trying to track across with your eyes so you don't lose track of where you are. So click on the solid dense concrete block, 7 Newton, 440 by 215 by 100 mil block. And then in the purchase price column, change the price to what you pay. I'll give you a moment to do that. So I should point out the unit of supply is square meters, so it's a square meter price. So I've changed mine to £10.50. Of course, you could go through repeating the process for all of the different block types. But for now, if we click the Save Edited Changes button again, assume we've been through and changed them all. And again, we get this dialog box saying, do you want to change the price change, save the price change as an adjustment? So we want to click Yes. And as before, you'll see the price difference in the adjustment column here. So it's saying my purchase price of £10.50 is minus 25%. So it's 25% less than the list price of £14 a square metre. So an adjustment shows the percentage difference between your price and the downloaded list price. And what's really clever about the software is that if the average price of a block goes up, at HB Excel we put our list price up as well. So this £14 would increase in line with the market movements. And your price will then go up or down accordingly, with your price being the same percentage above or below the list price. So in this example, we've got these solid dense concrete blocks which are £14 a square metre. That's the list price, and my purchase price is 25% less than that. So say the price of these blocks jumps up to £20 a square metre. My purchase price here will be £20 minus that 25%, so my purchase price would become £15 a square metre. So this means once you've edited your prices once, saved your price difference as an adjustment, your purchase costs are automatically going to track in line with the market, but keeping that percentage difference, your percentage discounted rate versus the market price. So you should only have to go through this process once. So just having a quick look at your questions. Is the list price an average market price then? So yes, that is the idea. Again, it's supposed to be a national average. But because there is so much variation geographically and also from merchant to merchant and according to the discounts and terms that you've got set up with your merchant, it requires you to do this bit of editing to make sure that your prices are right. Obviously, once you've got this base set of data correct, you're going to make sure your estimates are spot on. If another very good question, if you want to download the terms of a particular merchant that we have a link with, then what you would need to do is supply us with your trade account number, and there is a cost associated with that merchant link. I think it's £29 per year. And once we get you set up, tech guys will get you set up. You can do a price download using this button on the ribbon at the top of the screen. You might have noticed it, download prices. And once the merchant link's set up, those products for TP, if that's who you use, for example, will be downloaded directly into your software with your terms and discounts already set up there. We've got a question about adding in a new product. We're going to come to that very shortly, if that's okay. All right, so we've set up, we've edited the concrete blocks so they match what we pay. We've made sure we've saved the change as an adjustment. So now the software is going to automatically increase and decrease that price in line with the market. So that should hopefully future-proof your quotes. So let's do a little bit more of this. We'll do a little bit more of price editing before we go on to adding products into the price book. Okay, so what we're going to do is now filter the price book to show the aggregate products. So if you click on the filter icon again in the type column and then select aggregate, so tick the box next to aggregate, and we're also going to need to untick the blocks to remove the blocks. Once you've done that, click off the menu, click anywhere else on the screen. So you should now see a relatively short list of aggregate products. So again, to edit the prices, we go to the Editing Tools drop-down menu and we click Edit Prices. So Editing Tools, Edit Prices, the Purchase Price column has now opened up. So let's edit the price of a few things in here. Let's start with, if I can find it, the ballast bulk bag. I'm going to just click into the description column on the left hand side, and what that will do is it will order the materials alphabetically. So my ballast bulk bag was at the bottom because I'd done it in reverse order, so you can do the same in your software if you want the ballast bulk bag to be at the top. So you can see the list price is £40 per bulk bag. So let's say I pay £35 for that. Change it to whatever you pay. Then we'll have a look at the building sand bulk bag. Again, edit that to whatever you'd expect to pay. And then we'll find the building sand Let's go with a handy bag. Of course, you may need to take a trip to the merchant to confirm some of these prices, unless you know them all off the top of your head. So once you've changed those 3 prices, the ballast bulk bag, the building sand bulk bag, and the building sand handy bag, once again, we're going to click Save Edited Changes, and we're going to click Yes to save them as an adjustment. And there in the adjustment column, you can see the difference between what you pay and the list price. So, of course, for the purposes of training here, we are looking at the HPXL Price Tracker Plus products, and of course you can apply the principles above to edit materials from other suppliers. So, for example, we sometimes find that our customers will use one merchant for the majority of their products. So perhaps they use Travis Perkins for the bulk of their products, but they then buy their aggregate products from the local quarry. If this is the case, you could use the downloaded Travis Perkins prices for most products, but you could then edit the HPXL Price Tracker Plus prices, as we are here for the aggregates, and then use the HPXL Price Tracker Plus products in our estimates. I'm going to be showing you how you can pick and mix the different suppliers later on in this module. So got another good question. How do the merchant prices update if you negotiate a price for a particular job? How long does it take to update in Estimator Express? That's a really good question, and I will ask the development team here what the lead time on that is. So really what we want to know is how often merchant terms are updated. I'll check that and get back to you on that. Okay, so before we go any further, I just want to have a quick chat to you about bricks. So if we use the type filter again, so click on the funnel icon next to the type column, I'm going to unselect aggregate and I'm going to select bricks instead. Now, where bricks are concerned, they're a slightly special case. Because there are obviously thousands of different bricks on the market, instead of trying to make an extensive list of them all, what we have is a list of typically priced facing bricks and typically priced reclaimed facing bricks if we scroll down a little bit. So this means you can simply pick a brick or a brick allowance which is closest in price to the one that you're going to be using on your job. So if you know you're going to be using a 90p facing brick, you would select that when you're creating your estimate, and we'll look at that during module 3. Okay, so that's how bricks work. So now let's have a chat about adding your own materials. So you can add any product you like to the price book. So we've discussed adding labourers, but you can also add materials. You can add some plant or equipment or tools. You can add sundries, and you can add some subcontract items. But obviously most of the items that you're going to want to add are materials. So we're going to make a few new products now to practice doing this. There's no limit to what you can add. You just need to know the following things. You need to know what the product's called. You need to know how much it costs. And crucially, you need to know how it's supplied, or the unit of supply. So do you buy them individually or each? Do you buy it by the metre, square metre, the roll, and so on. So for example, we're going to add an insulation product in a moment. So if you're adding a type of insulation, you'd need to know if it's a sheet product. So if it was Celotex or Kingspan, you'd be buying it by the sheet, wouldn't you? But if it were a cavity wall insulation, that's often bought by the pack. So you would say that's the unit of supply is a pack. So when you want to create a new product, the easiest way to do it is to start with a similar product in the price book and use that as a template. That can make the process a bit quicker, but of course if you want to add a product in which is completely new, then you can do that from scratch, that's fine. So as I said, we're going to add in an insulation product. We're going to add a sheep wool product, in fact. So if we go to the type column and click on the filter icon, we're going to untick bricks and we're going to scroll down. You can use the scroll bar on the right, or you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse while your cursor's over the menu. Scroll down to find insulation and tick to show the insulation products. So you can see here we're looking at a list of HP Excel price tracker insulation products. There are all sorts in there, but we don't have an extensive list of eco products, so let's add this sheep's wool in. So ensuring that the merchant column is filtered to show just HP Excel price tracker, find an insulation product which has a unit of supply of each. So you see to the left of the merchant column there's a unit of supply column. It tells us how we buy it. And in fact they're almost all each. So I'm going to click on a polyiso insulation board, for example. It doesn't matter which product you choose as long as its unit of purchase is each. And then we're going to click the New Resource button on the tab at the top of the screen. And when you do that, the Add Resource dialog box pops up, and you can see all of the cells which are like input boxes you can type into and overtype what's in there. So first of all, we need to give this new product a description. So you can delete the contents of the description and start from scratch. Let's call it sheep's wool. We won't put an apostrophe in there because I don't know that the software would like that. Sheep's wool, 4 meters. Oops. Always happens when you're being watched. 4 meters by 380 millimeters by 100 millimeters. Or something of that nature. The reason we're including the dimensions of the insulation product in the description is that it'll help you at a later date when you need to tell the software the area that the roll will cover. So that's the generic description. Then we have the customer friendly description. So I'm just going to copy the sheep's wool bit. So I'm using my cursor to highlight sheep's wool. And I'm going to use Control and C to copy, and then Control and V keys on my keyboard to copy that into the next cell. Or you can type it out again, whichever works best for you. The customer friendly description, that's an option on the customer quote. So if you want to remove some of the technical elements of the material names, you can use customer friendly descriptions. It makes it a bit less jargony in your quote. So what we're doing is we're setting up a slightly simpler name for the quote. And then plan specific description. I believe that's for if you're going to use the building regulations notes and copy them back into Plans Express. So what I would do for that one is copy the whole of the top description, sheep's wool, and then paste it into the plan specific description. So I'm using the shortcut keys on my keyboard. Control C means copy and Control V pastes. Those are Windows shortcut keys. So once you've got your description set up, you then need to think about your unit cost. This is the price that you pay excluding VAT. So this is an ex-VAT cost you want to type in. So let's make that £47.50 per roll. So we don't need to apply a discount or adjustment. So then we can jump down to the unit of purchase. So what we're going to do is we're going to select roll from this drop-down box. So you click on the drop-down arrow, scroll down and find roll. You may have noticed that there's an add button here. If you click on that, you can create your own new unit of purchase. So for example, some new eco products are purchased by the bale, so you could add that in if you wanted to. Next we need to select a merchant. You can leave that set to HP Excel Price Tracker Plus, Again, if you want to, you can add in your own merchants. So if you've got a merchant that you're going to use repeatedly and you'd like to be able to filter the price book to show the resources of that particular merchant, then you can add them in here and you'll then be able to use that merchant filter to look at their particular products. If you've got no particular desire to do that, you can just simply select HP Excel Price Tracker Plus. Use HP Excel Price Tracker Plus as your go-to, your generic merchant. So then we've got the type. This is the material type. So that's set to insulation because we selected an insulation product to start with. So that's absolutely fine for our needs. Then we can set the delivery and payment lead time. So this information is used in some of the reports. So you can change that if you think it might take 4 weeks to deliver. 5 weeks is a month for payment, sounds about right, but you can change that again if you need to. The merchant code is automatically assigned, so you don't need to worry about that. And then we've got a few more boxes just to consider. So we've got the VAT rate, that's set to the current rate, but you can change that if you need to, if VAT rates change or if a particular product has a different VAT rate. And then we have wastage. So we've got this field called wastage increasing order quantity. So with lots of building materials, this wastage percentage is typically set to 10%. So that means it will order 10% extra. But you can leave it to whatever you, or change it to whatever you think is appropriate for the particular product that you're adding in. Wastage not affecting the order quantity, we can leave to 0. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. So at the bottom here, we can see the net purchase cost, including wastage. So once you've done that, click OK. And you'll see that your resource is added to the price book. And because it's ordered alphabetically, you can see sheep's wool is near the bottom here. Okay, so we've added one product. Now let's add in another one. And I just want to show you about allowance products. So we're going to change the filter, the type filter. So on the type column, click the filter icon and we're going to select ceramics, etc. I'm not sure what the etc. refers to, but and then we need to unselect insulation. So click on ceramics, click on insulation to unselect it, and then click elsewhere. So the ceramics section has various ceramic tiles and floor tiles, and it's got a bath seal in it. I guess that's what the etc. refers to, and a tile seal, mitre and corners. Okay, so within this section we've got what we call allowance products. Now allowance products are typical of the sort of products where the price could be anything from a really wide range because it's normally down to customer choice. So if you were doing a renovation job for a client and they were selecting the floor tiles, for example, it's very likely they'd be specifying what they want. Unless you're doing a budget fit out type job. So you can see we've already got some floor tiles here in the price book, but they're very much a budget product. So what we can do is we can click on this floor tiles product and we can click the new resource button. So we're going to use the existing floor tiles as a template and we're going to adapt it for our tiles that we want to add in. So let's say we're going to add a quarry floor tile. So what I'm going to do is click into the start of the description box and I'm going to type in quarry. So we don't have to start from scratch, we can just add the word quarry, quarry floor tiles. Of course we want to delete the word copy. It automatically adds that word copy because it can't have multiple materials with the same description. So you need to delete the copy out, word copy out once you've changed it. And we also want to change the allowance amount. So let's say they cost £87 per square metre. for argument's sake. So we've given it a description, and this time I'm just going to copy the whole of the description, and I'm going to copy and paste that description into the other description fields. The thing to take care of is that there are no typos in here, because the description, or the customer friendly description in particular, will appear on your customer quote, so you don't want any mistakes in there. And also be mindful of the language that you use. So if you were putting a budget product in there, you wouldn't want to put cheap floor tiles in there or anything that would come across badly. So just be mindful that these descriptions may appear in the quote depending on your settings. So then we need to update the unit cost. So as we've indicated above, that's £87. So the unit of purchase is set to square meters, so that's correct. So just work your way down the fields. Use the HP Excel Price Tracker Plus merchant, or add in your own merchant if you want to. The type is correct. Check your delivery and payment lead times, VAT rate, and then again we need to think about wastage. So for floor tiles it was set to 5%. So naturally there's going to be some wastage, isn't there, with floor tiles because of cutting and so on. And also with products like bricks, timber and so on. So as I mentioned before, this is going to add that wasted percentage onto the order quantity. So we're going to order 5% more tiles than we need for the area of floor. There's also another wastage field here, which I skipped over last time, which is the wastage not affecting order quantity. So what this allows you to do is add a wastage percentage onto whole items. So items such as boilers, taps, windows, doors, and so on that you buy individually. And you can enter a percentage for those types of product into this second wastage field. And what it will do is it will not add a wastage percentage onto the order quantity, because obviously you can't have 5% more of a boiler or 5% more of a window. But what it will do is it will add the wastage percentage to the price. So it will add 5% extra to the price for your boiler as a contingency. So if that's something you would like to do, if you think that's a good way of working, you could do that using that second field there. So once you're happy with all of the fields for your new resource, click OK. And you can see our quarry floor tiles have been added to the price book. Now you may have noticed that when you add a product in yourself, it will have a red list price. That's just a flag to you to let you know that Estimator Express or HP Excel, we won't automatically adjust those prices. Only the list prices which are in the software to start with will be updated when you do a price download. So yeah, you're going to have to keep an eye on those prices going forward to check they're still correct. If you're using that product in a year's time, you'll want to review the price. So a quick word of warning at this point. You only want to add in products which don't already exist in the price book. Don't add in another version of a product that's already in there. So for example, if you see the building sand bulk bag and you want to put in your own product with your own price, please avoid doing that. What you need to do is edit the existing HP Excel Price Tracker Plus building sand bulk bag to match what you pay, as we've done this afternoon. The reason we don't want you to add in products which are already there is that if you have duplicate products, you will then have to manually update their prices, as I've just explained. And it's also harder to pick your own products when you come to do the estimating. So only add in a new resource if it's something which doesn't already exist in the price book. Okay. So I'm just having a quick look at your question. Sorry, I haven't looked for a few minutes. So Danny, you're saying, is it red because it's one we've added? That's exactly right. Yes. Steve's asking, with a merchant code, can you adjust that to a supplier not on your list? Yes, you could. If you wanted to put a supplier code from a different supplier that we don't have a merchant link with, you can do that. That's no problem. Okay, let's move on then. So we've looked at labour and we've looked at material, and we're going to have a quick look through the other three sections of the price book. Then they're not so involved. So next we're going to move to the plant section. So if on the navigator you can click plant. Okay, so the plant section contains not just plant but also tools and equipment that you may use during the construction process. You may hire the equipment or you may own the equipment. If you own the equipment, you still need to charge for the use of it, so you still need to pass on the costs of it to the client. Otherwise, you're not covering your capital expenditure on those items, and any profits you think you're making from a job will in fact evaporate when your accountant looks at the books. We'll look at profit a little bit later on. So it's important to note that plant prices are not kept up to date by HFXL Price Tracker Plus. To edit the prices in here, it works just like in the other sections of the price book. You would go to the Editing Tools button and click Edit Prices. So what I'd like you to do is just have a quick look down the list, and we're going to go through and adjust several items. There are some really crucial ones that I want to draw your attention to. So first of all, just to point out, at the top of the plant section and the top of all sections of the price book, there's a search box. So if there's a particular item that you can't find just by scanning your eye down it, you can click into that search box. And I'm going to type in JCB. Oh, have we renamed it? I think we renamed it actually in the new version. Let's try excavator. There you go. We've updated the name. So if you type in excavator and then press the enter key on your keyboard, and what the search box does actually is it filters the price book, so it's a different type of filter. So here you can see we've got backhoe, excavator and driver, mini digger and driver, and tracked excavator and driver, and you can see the list price here. Now these items are a combination price. So this is a day price for the hire of the equipment and also somebody to drive them. So it could be a hired driver, it could be you, it could be one of your employees. But what you need to do is make sure that the daily cost for the plant also includes the labour to drive it. So if the plant costs 100 quid a day and you're paying your employee 160 per day, or £20 an hour, then the total plant cost would be £260 a day. So I'm going to update my backhoe loader, change that to £260 a day. So just click into each of those and update the purchase price to what you'd expect to pay. Once you've done that, you can click the X button in the search box. That will remove that search. Okay, the next thing I want to draw your attention to is portable toilet. These are obviously regularly used, so you need to make sure the cost is correct for them. So it's a weekly rate for this, set to £40 a week as default, but you can change that if you need to. And we've also got, I'm just going to scroll down the screen a little bit more, we've got site cabin. Again, that's a weekly cost, but if your job lasts 3 months or 6 months and it's out by £20 a week, those costs add up, don't they? So you want to make sure they're set up correctly. So we've also got a 20-ton tipper in here. So again, I'm going to use the search box. That's not a good way of searching, is it? Let's try tipper. Here we go. So we've got a 20-ton tipper, and you can see from the description that includes the driver and the landfill tax. So you need to add up the cost of the tipper plus the driver plus the landfill tax, which obviously varies depending on which council is charging. So take a look at that, change it if you need to. I'm going to click the X button in the search box again, and I'm now going to have a look for the skips. So you can see we've got a 7 metre cube skip. Again, that includes the landfill tax. So make sure it's correct, including your council tipping fee. Of course, if you work in different councils, it may be that you need to check this for each individual estimate you do. But make sure it's what you'd expect to pay or what you usually pay. Around most of the UK, we find it's £200, hence it's set to 200. But in some parts of the country, we've heard it can be up to £250 or £280 each. In London and Oxford and so on. So if you don't update that cost there and you're paying £280 per skip and you have 10 skips over the course of a job, that you could be 800 quid out of pocket just on your skips. So it's obviously important to make sure these things are right. So I'm going to click the X button again. And then I just want to point out some items in relation to parking. So I'm just going to scroll back up and see if I can find them in the list because they're ordered alphabetically at the moment. So we've got the daily parking fee. So if you're parking in a city and you've got parking fees, make sure your fee's set up correctly. There's also a few lines up a congestion charge for if you're working in London. And a little way up the screen again, we've got the bay suspension fee. So again, if you're working in a city, that might be very relevant to you. So make sure they're correct. Parking costs can obviously really add up. So make sure you get those costs right so that you're not ending up losing a really large percentage of your final net profit. Okay, so I've just been picking out some of the really critical items in the plant section, but of course you do need to have a look through all of the lines and see if there's anything else that stands out as being very different from what you pay in your area. I'll give you a minute or two just to have a bit more of a look down the list while I just take a quick drink. So yeah, cast your eye down it, see if there's anything else that stands out as being very different from what you pay. Update it if you want, and then we'll move on to the next section of the price book. Okie dokes. Obviously, you've got a bit of time later on today or this evening or whatever. It might be worth coming back and doing a bit more work in the price book to ensure you're happy with all of the prices in there. When you've finished editing your prices, it's the same routine as we've done before. Click Save Edited Changes, and we'll click Yes to save the changes as an adjustment. Okay, let's now move on to the subcontract section. So this is quite a quick section to look at. You can just scroll up and down it to see what's in there. The subcontractor section is basically a list of assorted types of contractor, and they're all priced, oh I say all, they're mostly priced at £1 each. If I filter it by list price. So you'll see we've got bricklaying quotation, carpentry, ceramic tiling, decorator, electrical contractor, and so on, and they're all set with a cost of £1. Now, the majority of these people used in this section are used in an estimating calculator called subcontractor quotations. Now, when you're working in subcontractor quotations, it allows you to type in a price for a subcontract task where they have given you a fixed price. So if, for example, a plumber has given you a supply and fit cost for fitting 3 radiators and connecting them to an existing system, you could add the cost, say £700 or whatever it is, into the subcontractor quotations estimating calculator. So in the price book, these different contractors always have a cost of £1. And if you want to add your own subcontractors in, you'll need to add them in with a list price set to £1. In the subcontractor quotation estimating calculator, you would then enter how many pounds each fixed price quote costs. This will make a bit more sense when we get into that particular estimating calculator in module 3, so we'll look at that next week. So all you need to remember is you can add your own subcontractors in, but give them a list price of £1. If I just scroll down and show you, there are a couple of other lines in here. Some are to do with flat roof waterproofing. We've got a budget price for electrical installation and plumbing and heating. So these particular items are in here because we find that they're usually quoted for in a supply and fit context. So in the case of flat roof waterproofing, we find it's traditionally priced by roofers as a supply and fit cost. So we've set up the software to work the same way. So there's a flat roof waterproofing allowance of £40. So I think that's typical for a bitumen type finish. If you're using fiberglass or GRP or another more expensive system, then you could edit the price of that. It might be something more like £100. Of course, there's many different types, so just make sure that the price allowance in there fits the system being used. But the main thing, the main point of this section of the price book is our subcontractor quotations here. Okay, I've just got an update from Jim, who is one of the directors on the technical side of things. He says that Travis Perkins and Keyline prices are updated weekly, so there is quite a quick turnaround. So if you do negotiate some new discounts, you should see them in your software quite quickly. Steve has asked, how does the program calculate the 20-ton tippers? It's based on volume, so it's based on cubic meters. So when you're estimating any work which requires excavation, it will be calculating the cubic meters of spoil, and then that will be used to calculate how much of a tipper or how many tippers are required to remove it from site. Okay, so one final section of the price book to look at is the sundry section. So the sundry section is similar to the subcontractor section in that it's a list of £1 people. So they are mostly people and costs used in the preliminary estimating calculator. So for assigning costs to things like structural engineers, surveyors, planning applications, insurance, and so on. So basically any costs that you as a builder are going to incur prior to construction starting, but ones that you still need to include in your quote. Unless you don't enjoy profits, but I think we'd all like a little bit more on that front, really. As with all the other sections of the price book, you can create your own sundry costs by using the new resource button. Should you find there's some kind of preliminary cost that you think needs adding in. Okay, so that is the whirlwind tour of the price book. I mentioned that I was going to talk to you about the favorite merchants tool. So if you have a look at the navigator, there is a section called favorite merchants. So if you click favorite merchants, now this allows you to decide whose prices you want the software to use for the different material types. So that's useful if you have a merchant link with one of our linked merchants, such as TP, Keyline, TradePoint. If you only have HPXL Price Tracker Plus products set up in your software, then you will not need to use this function. This is only useful if you have more than one merchant set up. So the most straightforward way of setting your favorite merchant is to select one merchant for all of your product types. So in this drop-down box at the very top of the screen, you can select the merchant who you use for the majority or all of your material purchases. So say, for example, I want to select TradePoint. You'd select your merchant and then click Set. And then you'll see that for all the different material types, I'm now using the TradePoint resources. You can also pick a mix, selecting different merchants for different material types. So I think I gave an example earlier of you might want to use your local quarry for your aggregates. So I could go to the aggregate product type, click on the drop-down box and select HPXL Price Tracker Plus. And as I talked about earlier, if you have then set up your HPXL Price Tracker Plus aggregate products to match what your quarry charges, then you can use your local quarry prices for those particular material types. Perhaps I've got a local timber merchant who I use for my timber products. Again, I could set up my HPXL Price Tracker Plus resources to the prices I pay my timber merchant. And then in here, I could find the different timber resource types. So we've got carcassing timber, set that to HPXL Price Tracker Plus. You have to spend a moment casting your eye down the list, but we've got timber moldings, set those to HPXL Price Tracker Plus, timber various, again, set them to HPXL Price Tracker Plus. So that's how you would select the different suppliers for the different material types. There is another option within each individual material type. You can select the custom option and then you click the adjacent edit button, and that allows you to go into very fine detail of which particular resources. You can select the materials individually, so you can choose which particular supplier you want to use for your ballast bulk bag and so on. So you can do it in really fine detail if you want to. But the main thing to do then is to select your preferred merchant for the majority of your products from the top drop down. And then if you want to set particular resource types up to your local merchants that you use, select the HPXL Price Tracker Plus options, and in your price book, make sure those HPXL Price Tracker products match what you pay your guys, your local merchants. So once you've got your settings how you want them, there's a button hidden right at the bottom right called Save Preferences. You would click that, and then what it does is it goes into all of the different specifications in the software, and it specifies your chosen suppliers for the different resource types within the specification. Okay, so just a quick summary of what we've done. In the price book, there are 5 different sections: material, labour, plant, subcontract and sundry. It's really worthwhile spending a few hours tweaking your price book so that it has the correct costs, and then you've got a really good set of base data for your estimates. Once you've set up those costs and once you've set up your prices and saved them as an adjustment, then the material prices will track market changes. So it takes a little bit of time at the outset, but once it's done, you should have a good set of prices to be using as a basis for your estimates. So that's the price book and favourite merchants, and I'd now like to show you the specifications. So if you can click Specifications on the navigator, This will open up the library of specifications. Out of the box, your software will have 7 specifications, depending on the version that you're running. So I'm just going to run through the different specifications and talk about the differences between them and when you might use them. So I'm going to go through in a slightly different order. I'm going to start with the new build spec. The new build spec basically follows the latest building regs and is based on the government's elemental recipe for new builds. As a new build spec, it has the fastest build speeds and it defaults to a JCB for all of the groundwork. So it assumes the work is going to be pretty straightforward, straight runs, long runs, and it assumes you've got decent access so you can have a JCB for the groundwork. Next, the extension spec. So that is the current spec for standard extension work. The main difference between the extension spec and the new build spec is that it allows longer build times. So I think it might allow about 10% extra because it assumes that an extension is likely to be slightly slower due to issues like access and care of the existing property. The default excavator for the extension spec is a mini digger. So again, reflecting the fact that access might be restricted. We've got the renovation spec. That's similar to the extension spec, but with slightly longer build times, as it's assuming that a renovation is going to have more unforeseen issues than an extension, plus all of the added complications that you would expect for an extension, so issues like access, care of the property. Then we've got the new build timber frame spec. So this is for jobs where you have a full timber frame kit supplied for the job. So what it does, the way it works is it removes the inner leaf from the cavity walls, and it also removes the timber from the estimated roof. That's because the timber frame kit will make up the inner leaf and the roof structure. So when you're using this spec, it's assumed that you will be adding a price for a supplied timber frame kit into the estimate. So we've also got an extension timber frame spec, so that does exactly the same as the new build timber frame spec, but with increased build times. We've got a new build site fabricated timber frame spec. So this specification has been developed for when you are constructing your own timber frame walls on site, or if you are purchasing a kit for the timber frame walls. However, it only deals with the walls and it doesn't alter the specification of the roof structure. So unlike the new build timber frame spec where it assumes the roof is part of the timber frame kit, this only alters the structure of the walls. We've got the extension site fabricated timber frame spec. So same as before, but allows slightly longer for the work to be done. So I think that's all 7 of the specifications covered. So now we've gone through the basics of what types of job the different specs cover, just a little bit more about what specifications do. So you're probably familiar with a specification in terms of an architect spec, which is a list of materials. In terms of our software, it also is a list of labour and plant items that are being chosen for a particular job. The idea of having these in the software is that you can customize them to your choice of products for a particular task. So you can edit the supplied specifications, or you can copy them and you can make your own. So unlike with the price book where I said it's unlikely you're going to want to copy the price book, with specifications it may well be that you do want to copy them. So just a couple of examples of where you might want to copy a spec. So say you do regular work with a particular architect who always specifies a particular type of timber for his roof joists, which is slightly different from the norm. What you could do is you could copy the new build spec and you could make a new specification called My Architect's New Build Spec. or whatever the architect's called. You could then go into this specification and change the roof timber products to the ones that your architect likes to specify. And then once you've saved it, it means that whenever you do work for that particular architect, you have a specification set up with his default choice of materials, his or her default choice of materials, I should say, and you can start an estimate using that spec, and you know that you've already got the materials set up correctly and you don't have to think about them again. Or say you like to use a different type of block than the one that's specified when you build extensions. So you could copy the extension spec and you could make a new one called Bob's extension spec, or whatever you want to call it. You then open up the spec, find the places where the 7 Newton blocks are specified, for example, and change them to 10 Newton blocks, because that's the way you work. Once you've done that, whenever you create a new estimate for an extension, you would select My Extension Spec and know that all your blocks are already set to the ones that you like to use. So to summarise then, a specification in terms of the software is a default way of working. So you can set up the specifications to work the way you like to work. You can then, of course, tweak the specification within every estimate. But if you find there's an item that you change in many or every estimate, then it makes sense that you change the product in the relevant specification and then save it in the specification. Over time, you might want to make custom specifications or just make changes to the existing ones to suit different circumstances. And once you've made the changes within the specification, you don't have to make that same change time and time again every time you do a new estimate. Now, Steve, you've said you've only got 5 specifications. I think the specifications that are available in your software will vary slightly depending on which version of the software you're running. I've obviously got access to all of them here, but you might have a slightly different list depending on which package you purchased. If you let me know which package you bought, Steve, and I'll double check with the tech guys that you've got the right specs there. Okay. Right then, let's have a go at making our own specification. So if you click on the extension specification and click, well, you don't actually have to click on the specification, but it helps. If you click on it first and then click the copy button, a box pops up saying to give it a name. I'm going to be really boring and call it My Extension Spec. You call it whatever makes sense to you. Then click OK. And after a moment, the specification will open up. Okay, so just a quick introduction to the specification screen. On the left-hand side, the left-hand column is the item used for column. So that shows the different tasks. So the tasks could be a material choice, for example, trench blocks, bricks above DPC, cavity insulation, and so on. They could also be labour tasks. So if I scroll down the screen a little way, you'll see we've got some labour tasks. So lay the trench blocks, lay bricks above DPC, and then we've got fixed cavity insulation and so on. A little further down, we'll see we've also got a few labour tasks here. So we've got plant for the excavation, which is a mini digger because it's an excavation spec, plant to remove the spoil from site, and so on. There will also be very occasional sundry or subcontractor items in the spec, but the vast majority are material and labour tasks. So in most cases, as I've just described, where you see a material task, there will be a corresponding labour task. Each subsection is organised by materials at the top, and then the labour, and then any plant items at the bottom. So the first section that we're looking at here, if you look at this blue row here, it's the cavity wall spec and general walling spec. So this section of the specification is what all of the different cavity wall estimating calculators refer to when they are selecting their materials and labour. If we scroll down a little way, so you can place your cursor over the specification and use your scroll wheel on your mouse, you'll see we have other sections of the spec. So there's a short bit relating to the stone face cavity walls. A little further down we've got partition block wall specification. We've got a cavity block wall specification, ICF walls. And if we keep going, we will come shortly to the tiled roof general specification. Of course, in any particular estimate you're doing, you're not going to be using all these different wall types. Here we go. So we've come to the tiled roof general specification. So all of the sloping tiled roof workbooks, so the apex roof, apex valley, lean-to roof, and so on, they all refer to this section of the specification to choose the materials and labour. So this repeats itself all the way down the extension specification. There are different sections for the different elements of the job, and within there it specifies the materials, then the labour and any plant items. So the specification that you select is in control of your estimate. It's the boss really. It tells your estimate what to use, what products to use, and how much of them to use, and also it tells the estimate who's going to do a task, so which labourers are selected and how long each task will take. So specifications play a really important role. So now hopefully you've got a rough idea of what the specification is doing and the role it's playing in an estimate. Let's have a look at how we can change it to suit the way that you like to work. So there are two different ways basically in which you can change the spec. You can select a different resource, so you can select a different material or labourer for a task, or you can change how much of a resource, so how much of a product or how much of a labourer's time is needed for a particular task. So the first thing we're going to have a go at doing is changing a resource. So let's have a go at changing a material. So first of all, let's scroll right back up to the top of the specification. I'm going to use the scroll bar on the right to do that quickly. We're coming back to the top, which is the cavity wall specification. If we look about 15 lines down, you'll find highlighted in red, there's a line called cavity insulation. Items highlighted in red are ones which we've given a critical marker. And that basically means we believe they'll have a significant impact on your estimate. It also helps us find things while we're doing training as well, so I might refer to the colour of the text to help us locate things. So if you can click on the cavity insulation or anywhere along that row to select it, and then on the ribbon at the top of the screen you'll see we've got the specification tab here, and we're going to click change resource. So we're going to swap the insulation product. Okay, now in fact you will probably have a different insulation product selected from me, because I think I've already had a play around in here. I've got a polyiso insulation board. It may be that you've got a GP fiberglass insulation roll or something in there instead, but that's fine, because what I'd actually like you to do is select a polyiso insulation board. So I should just recap. When you click the change resource button, the price book opens up over the top of your specification, and this allows you to select an alternative resource to use for that particular task. Now, because we've clicked on an insulation item, it's opened up in the insulation section, so that should help us locate a resource that we need quickly. So as I said, what we want is a Celotex type product from the HP Excel Price Tracker Plus range, and we use the non-branded name for this product, which is polyisocyanurate. So if you can find the polyisocyanurate insulation board, 75mm thick one, you may need to scroll up or down a little way. It's all ordered alphabetically, so that should help you. There's also a search box I should mention if you're having trouble locating a particular resource. Once you've located that polyiso 75mm board, highlight it in blue, so click on it to highlight it, and then click the Select Resource button. Now the Edit Resource box will pop up. This happens because when you change a resource, it may have a different usage factor. So it may need to use a different amount of that particular resource for a particular job. So in the Edit Resource box, you will find the calculator icon here. This is really handy for helping us to work out what the usage factor should be. So the usage factor determines how much of a material is used for a task, or in the case of a labour item, how long a labourer takes to complete a task. So in your original cavity wall pack, the coverage is about 5.46 square metres, I believe. But the polyiso sheet we just selected covers 2.88 square metres. So when you select a different resource, the software doesn't automatically change the usage factor. So that means you need to review the usage factor if you change a product. So you can type a different usage factor directly into this box here. However, that number can be a bit confusing. So we've added this calculator icon in here to help you work out what the usage factor of a particular resource needs to be. So if you click on the calculator icon, and you'll now get an explanation of what's going on. So the figures in your boxes will be slightly different. That's because you started off with a different resource from me. So it's telling me that I'm using one of these polyiso boards for 2.88 square metres of cavity insulation, and that indeed is correct, and that's what you need to set your software to. So we know one of these polyiso boards covers 2.88 square metres. So just read through the workings and type in the figures as they make sense for the particular resource you're using. So if you make sure the top box says says 1, sorry, brain's misfiring, and make sure the second box says 2.88. That's because if you multiply 2.4 by 1.2 meters, you get 2.88, I believe. Once you've typed those two figures in, you'll see the usage factor updates at the bottom. So it's telling us we're using just over a third of one of these boards to cover a metre squared. So that sounds about right. So once you've changed that, click OK. Check the estimate rate, looks about right. So it's telling us it's costing us £10.24 per square metre. The build phase is set to the masonry shell. That's correct. We're still going to fix the insulation at in the same phase. So that's fine. So we can click OK. OK. So now we've finished changing that resource. We also need to consider whether the labour allowance needs to change. So does using that new product mean the build speed is going to change? So in this case, because we've changed from one product, so cavity insulation pack, to the polyiso board, the answer is yes. The new product will take longer to install in this case because it requires cutting and taping. The old cavity pack insulation just gets thrown into place. So that obviously doesn't take as long to do. So now we're going to have a go at making the second type of change that you can in the specification, and that's editing a resource. So we're going to carry on using the same labourer but we're going to alter the usage factor. So we're going to slow down the build speed effectively. So as we saw before, most material tasks have a corresponding labour task. So I've already scrolled down here, and you'll need to do the same. If you scroll a little way down the specification, you will find a line called Fix Cavity Insulation. If you're having trouble finding it, type into the search box Fix Cavity, and the software will highlight any lines with those words in. So locate that Fixed Cavity Insulation, click on the line, and this time we're going to not click the Change Resource button. As I said, we're happy with the labours we've got specified there, but we do want to change the usage factor. So we're going to click Edit Resource. Now the Edit Resource box opens up, and this will look very familiar because we came across this before when we were changing the resource. When you're editing a resource, you just come directly to this screen though, because of course you don't need to select a different resource from the price book. So if we click on the calculator icon, we can read through the workings out to see what has been allowed for fixing the cavity insulation. So it says at the moment it's taking 1 hour for 2 brickies and a mate to fix 27.7778 square meters of cavity insulation. Now that's on the basis that we were using the cavity pack. Let's say this new insulation that we've selected takes twice as long to install. So there's a couple of ways we could change that. The most straightforward way is to change this figure in the top box here. We could say it takes 2 hours rather than 1 hour to fit that same amount of cavity insulation. Of course, the other thing you could do is you could say leave that set to 1 hour, and you could say it takes 1 hour to fix 14 square meters, so we're halving the amount of insulation they can fit in that 1 hour. I've obviously rounded up a little bit to do that, but whichever way makes more sense to you, just read through the workings and tweak those figures so they make sense for the materials that you've chosen. So once you've done that, so you've indicated it's taking twice as long to fix the insulation, click OK, click OK again. You can of course review the usage factor and the estimate rate to check it makes sense to you, and then click OK. From the specification, if you cast your eye along the row, you'll see the purchase cost for that gang, the usage factor, and the estimate rate, and so on. So Steve's asked, in the usage factor box, could you enter a sum like in Excel, 1.2 by 2.4? So if we go back to our insulation here, I don't believe you can type sums into there. And let's see what happens if we do. Steve, you just taught me something new. So if you're whizzy with your typing calculations into Excel, you can use that input box there as a cell in Excel in the same way as you do rather. So if that's helpful to you, to help you work out the square meterage of items, you can do that. I'm going to make a note of that for future training. That's inspired. Saves you having to have your calculator next to you, doesn't it? Okay, cool. So I know this is an absolute whirlwind, and I know time is slipping away from us today. So just to recap what we've just done, we have had a go at swapping a resource. So you can select any resource in the spec and click the Change Resource button to select a different resource from the price book, and you then need to review the usage factor and check that you're using the right amount of that resource for the particular job you're doing. And the other thing you can do is you can just edit a resource, as we did with our labour to fix the cavity insulation. And from the edit resource box, again, you can change the usage factor. Always click the calculator icon, read through the workings, because it helps you to get your head around what this usage factor means, what it's doing, and it can help you to put the right figures in to make sure that usage factor is correct. Okay, so that's how to edit items in the specifications. There's a couple of other things I just want to show you really briefly. On the navigator on the left hand side, you'll see there's a section called overhead, profit and inflation. If you click on there, you'll see this is where you can set the default overhead, profit and inflation. So set these figures. So we've got overhead for each of the 5 different sections of the price book. We've got profit, each of those different sections, and inflation rates as well. Set those to whatever is normal for your business. So we've got overheads set to 15%. So on top of your job cost, it will add 15% for overheads, and then it will add 15% for profit. So that's your net profit. That's the money you should make once all overheads have been accounted for. So these are the defaults the software comes with. Of course, you can change them. If your target is 20% profit, you can change that across the board. And you can see here it gives you your total markup, so it's going to add 35% onto the estimate. Overheads obviously includes all of those costs which can't be accounted for in the estimate. So it's things like your office costs, your computers and printers and management costs, and all of those other overheads which need to be accounted for, because otherwise you're going to be losing a good chunk of your profit if you don't allow for that. It may be that you need to have a conversation with your accountant about what those figures should be. It used to be that we worked in terms of gross profit, so we didn't have a separate section for overheads and profits. We just had profit, what we call profit, and that was set to 30% by default. But it's obviously better for your business if you can have a clearer view on what your overhead percentage is and what your net profit is. Inflation here is another thing worth thinking about. Obviously, at the moment, material prices and also specialist labour costs are rising. And what inflation allows you to do, it allows you to project price rises across the five different resource types. You can set the delay before you inflate, so that's roughly 3 months, isn't it? So you can say from after 3 months I want to start incrementally applying inflation to the quote, so that you're not losing out. You shouldn't be losing out on profit because prices are increasing. Those price increases need passing on to the customer. So this is where you set your defaults. Once you've created an estimate, you can tweak the overheads and profit within that particular estimate. And as regards inflation, you can decide when you create your quote whether you want to add inflation on. There's an option there to have it switched on or off. So it doesn't mean if you've got figures entered here, it doesn't mean you have to apply inflation, but it just sets the rates for if you do. So yeah, that's another important part of the software, and something that I wanted to make you aware of. So that's overhead, profit and inflation, and that is the end of today's module.